I use the term person with dementia because the term person suffering from dementia drives me up the wall. They are people first, and a lot of them are not suffering. The families think that they're suffering, and we have to be careful about the words that we use. The words we use influence how we think, and how we think influences the words we use. So for me to take the word suffering out of dementia and substitute the word living makes a huge difference in just how I practice with people. What I would like to do is I can talk about dementia till dinner time. I've written a few different subjects, and I'd kind of like you guys to tell me where to start, because I can jump off and talk about anything. But I don't know what kind of training you've had, what situations you've been in, what you already know and what you don't know. So let me know where you want me to start. We've got Dementia 101 and the stages of dementia. We have caregiver and volunteer balance, truth in discussion, staying in truth or guiding around the truth, because that's a big dementia issue, asking for words and feelings, communication in general, where dementia is concerned, violence and unease, fear of the patient. So this is when the caregiver or the spouse or loved one, family member, is afraid of approaching the dying person. Pets in the home, activities, getting to know the person with dementia, and types of grief. You guys probably think about types of grief more than the average person, but there are types of grief that are really front and center to dementia. So, anyone want to tell me where to start?
I'd like the truth in discussion, especially. Would you?
Yeah.
Okay. So when we were talking with people with dementia, kind of goes back to the stages. I only go with 3 stages. You can do a 7 or 9. It's very technical. Early stage is when you are talking to somebody with dementia and you hardly realize that. Like they might repeat a little bit, but in general, if they're staying with you in an engaged conversation, they're understanding it, they know when it's their turn to talk. Those are still early stages. End stage or later stages, your gut instinct tells you to watch them wherever they go and whatever they're doing. If they're looking through a closet, they're probably looking for the bathroom, right? Your instincts tell you to watch them. Mid-stage is everything in between, where everything feels like it has a tipping point. You know, like, oh, she was okay with this yesterday, but today it doesn't really feel quite right. You're right on that tipping point where you need to start changing your reaction to things. Truth is huge here. People with dementia lose track of time, they lose track of place, and they lose track of people. And by losing track, I mean they mix them all. So they also have a hard time understanding the passage of time. And this has to do with, especially with Alzheimer's, it has to do with short-term memory is the first part of the brain to shrink. This is what's happening in dementia. The brain is shrinking. And if the hippocampus, which is deep in the center, if that starts to shrink, that's where new memories are formed. And the more that shrinks, the bigger the gap is for new memories. So from today to where they remember last gets wider and wider. This is why they remember their kindergarten teacher, but they don't know what they had for breakfast. It's also why a lot of people don't know how old they are. And they start going backwards in time. And it helps a lot to know how old people think they are. So if you work that into the conversation, because a lot of times it happens a lot in the bathroom, looking at each other in the mirror, and they'll go, so, oh, look how old I look like I'm 80. And you're thinking that's exactly how old you are, but they don't think they are. That tells you right away, they don't think they're 80. And then you might go, well, how old are you? Huh? And I'll say, well, I'm 61. And they go, really? I don't think so. So that tells me that they think they're younger. And I said, well, how old do you think that you are? Huh. Well, let me think. And I'll say, do you think, so I know they're 80. Do you think you might be 70? I don't know. So 60? That's more like it. That gives me a huge chunk of information of how old they think they are. That's my entryway into them. What do we do when we're 60 as opposed to 80? Right? So that's the kind of conversation. If you're 60, how old are your kids? How old does she think her spouse is? If her spouse is dying and is 85 and she thinks she's 60, this brings to mind, like, okay, this is where the gaps are. This is where the misunderstandings happen, because they may not know who this old man in the bed is, right? This is why they don't know their kids all the time. This is why the kids stop visiting, because mom doesn't know who I am anymore. It's a whole nother issue when we get to talking about energy. Mom just doesn't recognize you, because if mom thinks she's 60 and you're 50, how can you be her daughter? It doesn't make sense. So unfortunately, that's where a lot of people stop visiting. Mom doesn't know me anymore. No, mom just doesn't know your face, or mom doesn't remember your name. Mom still knows your energy. So truth. When my mom was dying, she looked at me and said, Kerry, am I dying? So this gets back to, should have started with Dementia 101, I guess, the type of dementia she had. She had vascular dementia. And so there's an up and down and an in and out of ability there. She always knew who I was. She knew my name until the day she died. Other parts of her brain were all over the place, but vascular dementia, Lewy bodies dementia can go in and out of knowing where they are and who they're with. Alzheimer's is kind of a slide. When my mom asked, Kerry, am I dying? I said, so probably not today, but you know it's coming pretty soon. And she just nodded, and I said, I kind of feel like you've been preparing for a while. Do you think you're ready? And she said, yeah, I think I am. And I said, I think you are too. That was the end of that discussion. It just went, everything just eased. She wanted the truth. She wanted to know, like, where am I in my own process? And she wanted to be reminded that she's been preparing for this. There's work to be done at the end of life. You all know that better than I. And for a family to ignore that with someone with dementia, I don't know that is terribly respectful. I also think when people with dementia are the ones who are dying, I try to get families to acknowledge that, and can we talk about the end-of-life care that they might want before they can't make those decisions. And we were just having a discussion a little bit ago about the truth in dementia. I've had so many people say to me, okay, so when I get to talk to my mom, she doesn't know she has dementia, and we're not telling her. And you know, my first thought is, Mom probably already knows. Mom's already been lost several times. She just hasn't told you. You know, she's gotten confused enough times and made enough mistakes in public to start covering for herself. And the family doesn't realize that, and so the family is covering for her. So everyone's covering for each other because nobody wants to put it out on the table. And that's a big part of my job, is trying to figure out where is the emotional ability with the family and with the person with dementia to put it out on the table and say, okay, this is what you have. And can we keep that truth above board for the entire dementia journey? because some people in the family are willing to jump in and some people just aren't. And you got to know who's in and who's out. Where truth comes in and when to step into it and when to step around it. I had a client with dementia whose dog had a stroke in the living room. And it was in the middle of a family event. Part of the family took the dog to the vet, part of the family stayed with her. And the dog never came home. It died at the vet, and for probably a week, every time we walked past that spot in the dining room or in the living room, she stopped and she looked at me and she said, "Honey, what happened here?" And she stopped right where the dog had a stroke. What happened here? So this tells you she knew something happened. This is how we remember. We remember things that are emotional. We remember things that are new or different or fun or strange or scary. She knew something had happened there. We had a long history of being honest with each other. This is where Tucker had his stroke. So we sit with that for a while. Okay, let's talk about this. Each day, the way we talked about it softened and softened and softened until I felt like she was okay not talking about it anymore. Then I changed the furniture in the room so that she was not walking through that space anymore. She was walking around it. But I wanted to make sure that enough processing had happened for us to let go of that. So that's kind of the truth in that. Like, how far can you step in? Are they freaking out or not? Can they handle the truth? If they can't, you can back away. The nice thing about working with people with dementia is that if you make a mistake, just be quiet about it. Come back the next day and do it a different way. They won't remember. What rises to the top is the last thing, or the most powerful thing, or the thing that resonates the most with them. So as you get to know people with dementia more and more, you will know how to approach them. And I hope that it seems like you guys are all matched with people for pretty long periods of time. So to get to know someone with dementia helps them a lot. They won't know your name unless they're in early stages. They will read your energy. Should we get into that conversation? Language is one of the earlier things that people see issues with. Looking for words, using the wrong word. Think about how they substitute words. That tells you their innate intelligence and their creativity. Thick equals heavy, equals dark, equals fat, equals strong. Any of those substitutes, there's no sense in correcting them. You know what they're talking about. You got the message. Also, remember that when people are searching, and some people actually look up at the ceiling, like, where's that word? Give them time, because they want to finish the thought. And if you come in and throw an idea out to them, you might be wrong, and then you're totally throwing them off base. It's okay to say, do you want some help? And they should tell you, nope, I'll find it, in which case, don't ever provide them with help, because they're already telling you something about themselves. If they say, yeah, do you know the word? Go ahead and jump in. Sometimes people will substitute a word that doesn't make any sense because it's the main thought that they just want to plug in that empty space so they can get the thought out. Because it's the general thought that's more important than that one word that they can't find. So a lot of speaking with people with dementia is listening more for the general idea. And while you're listening for the general idea, listen to their cadence. You can tell, because people go in and out of regular speech word salad, which is English but mixed up, and gibberish, which is blah, 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 and a combination of all of those. They'll just mix all of it to get an idea out. If you listen to the cadence of a word, of a sentence, the lilt of the way they speak, you'll be able to know, are they asking you a question? Are they angry? Are they throwing a statement down? Are they teasing you? Humor is still intact. And you can tell a lot of that by their eyes. If they're throwing something out to you and there's a sparkle in their eyes, they're throwing something positive and fun out to you. How you catch it and bring it back. And Aunt Gladys. All I hear is Aunt Gladys. I don't know what the hell she's talking about, but I go, oh, I love stories about Aunt Gladys. Keep going. I've caught that ball and thrown it back to her. I don't even know what the subject is. I just know Gladys is involved. And Gladys is important to them. It keeps them talking. And that brings relevance, the relevance quotient up. Anytime you can have a give and take, a lot of people with dementia go quiet, and it's not because they can't speak. It's because something tells them, nobody understands me anymore, or I'm talking too slowly, I'm not making sense. And depending on the dementia, I've got one client with Lewy body's dementia, so a lot of stuff gets mixed up, and then 10 minutes later he makes perfect sense. But sometimes something comes out of his mouth and I just go, oh wow. And I'm driving along and he says something to me and then he goes, huh. Okay, that didn't even make sense in my own head. And then we just laugh and I go, whenever you're ready, just try again. You know? Anyway, where language is concerned, and this is just my whole workshop is all my own concepts, just from working in the field. But I really feel like we all have an ability to read each other's energy, but we also have the ability of language, and we choose to use that more often. So if you think of our layer of language ability, once that starts to go, can we go to the next level, which is where the energy reading is. And that's where people with dementia will be waiting for you. People with dementia can read the energy in the room better than any of us can. And they read it as soon as they walk in. And they read it as soon as you walk in. So nonverbal communication is huge. How you enter a room and how balanced you are is huge. Take a few minutes before coming in, and you probably do this already because you have to understand your own energy level as you walk into a room with a patient. Same thing with somebody with dementia. I sometimes envision a basket or something outside where I take all of my personal crap and put it. And it'll wait for me when I leave. I step in a balanced way, and if I become unbalanced for any reason, I just go, can I use your restroom? And I go in the restroom, and I do whatever I need to do, breathing exercises, crying, whatever, to balance myself before I come back out. And a lot of times someone with dementia will look at you and they'll go, oh, hi. And they start all over again, and it might have been that person who just said the nastiest thing to me and got me to go to the bathroom to cry. Right. And I come back out and they're like, well, where have you been? It's really kind of neat to be able to, I mean, can any of us wipe that slate clean that fast? It's kind of nice to go, okay, I got a mulligan. I'm starting over.
Yeah.
Whatever I did 10 minutes ago obviously isn't working. I get to start over. That's the beauty of dementia. Did that answer some questions with the truth in dementia? I have a client right now whose significant other is dying, and they have not figured out. Of course, I'm pushing hospice, and they haven't figured out, and the decision is his. But she is still in early stages, and he's thinking that she can't handle it, and so he wants to leave the house. The family brought me in and said, where do you think she is? Do you think she can handle it? And I said, I not only think she can handle it, I think she should be part of the process. But that's just my opinion. I've been with her for over a year now. And she processes really well. But it's the family's decision. So I just throw my 2 cents worth in and step out. But however that resolves itself is up to them. But yeah, the truth, there's tipping points in trying to figure out how much truth someone can handle. If somebody asks you, and they might ask you questions that are questions they wouldn't ask their own family. I mean, I think this is the bartender syndrome. You know, we tell a perfect stranger what we would never tell our family. If somebody says to me, do you think my wife is dying? I might say to them, you know, I just met her, so I'm not sure. Like I would never say, oh, no, that's not happening. Don't worry about that. And it might be a situation where the entire family is telling her that. I'm not about to blatantly lie like that, but at the same time I'll say, I'm not sure, I just met her, what do you think? When you ask someone with dementia what they think, they will often tell you exactly what they think.
Yeah.
They might not be able to get the words quite right, but you understand what direction they're going in and how engaging they're willing to be. So if they say, yeah, I think my wife is dying, it's like, well, you might be right on that. How do you want to proceed? How can I help you with this? I also think I've had really good luck asking people with dementia, are you afraid? And you have to be specific. Usually I'm in a situation where I'm asking people, are you afraid of your diagnosis? So I would probably ask the same, are you afraid of your husband dying? Because think about a couple of things. They're not only dealing with the person and their loved one who's dying, the other conversation in their head is probably, who's going to take care of me? Who's going to feed the dog? Who's going to give me my medications? Does this mean I have to go into assisted living? Am I going to be kicked to the curb? Who's going to take care of me? And I wouldn't doubt that whole conversation gets lost because everyone is paying attention to the person who's dying. So these are serious questions. And the person, a lot of times, who is dying has been the one who's been taking care of the one with dementia. And the other thing too is how active in caring for the dying can the person with dementia be? There's a tipping point there too. When do they make it more difficult? When are they literally in the way? And you don't know how to get them out of the room, so the people coming in to bathe the husband or administer some kind of medication, how do you usher them out if they're disruptive? So let's get into that. So violence and unease was one of the things. So if you're talking about fear and you're talking about unease, Terry and I were talking about this at lunch yesterday. People who work with dementia are trained to always get on their level, go eye to eye, lean in. And it has been my experience that sounds really lovely, but when someone's upset, side to side work is much more effective. Especially if you are walking, you're just walking or driving, you're side by side moving forward. The conversation is easier for them because less is expected, or they perceive that less is expected. When you're sitting face to face with someone and asking questions, they freeze up because they know, okay, I'm going to be expected to hold up my end of the conversation. I'm upset. I can't find my words. They're all negative emotions coming up right now. And if you do side-to-side work, it takes that expectation away. Maybe you're not doing anything. Maybe you're just sitting side by side looking out the window. Somewhere along the line, you can lean over and go, so, what are you thinking about? And just do it really casually. See what comes up. This face-to-face stuff gets pretty threatening sometimes. So anytime somebody is upset, they might be trying to keep you from the patient. Like they don't know who you are. They might be guarding their loved one. In which case, take their lead and back off. I have stayed up to 45 minutes right next to a door because my presence is scaring someone as I come in. And maybe I'm doing this over the course of 45 minutes, just really slowly breaking my way towards the rest of the room.
You mentioned walking. I wonder if you observed a relationship between physical activity, that kind of thing, walking, companionship, as a companion or not, and improved clarity or improved verbalization.
Yeah, absolutely, especially if it's someone with vascular dementia. That's not a brain disease, that's a disease of not enough blood getting to the brain. So any kind of whole body movement, or if they're sitting down, just to even pedal their feet, keeps that blood circulating.
Walk the dog.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
My daughter is a psychotherapist, and she has a little itty-bitty little dog. And often, she said initially, that's what we'll do, is we'll walk with the dog. And then it decreases the anxiety, so it improves the cognition.
Yep. It does all of that, plus you're doing the side-by-side work. That when you're out walking the dog, your first focus is on the dog. As the walk becomes kind of a stroll, there's more ease in conversation with just about anything can come up. I rarely ask people questions like, well, how did you sleep? What did you have for breakfast? Have you hydrated yesterday? Have you had your meds? I don't do any of those in question and answer ways. I find it all out through discussion. And a lot of times we'll just be driving and I'll go, oh gosh, I didn't sleep well last night. See if they bite. Oh, I slept great last night. Good for you. You've been sleeping well lately. It comes up in conversation. You glean a lot more information about someone when they are at ease and you're just moving along. Has anyone had any issues with somebody with dementia getting violent?
It has happened.
Huh?
It has happened.
So I'll go through this really quickly. I got pinned up against a wall one time by somebody who really could have snapped both of my wrists easily. And like this. And he says, you want to go? We'll go right now. You want to go? You want to go? And I went, okay. Take a deep breath. And I just had my whole body go limp. And as soon as that happened, he got confused. Like he had no idea, oh, she's not fighting back. I don't know what to do with this. I lowered my eyes and I just started going, shh, we're okay, we're okay, we're okay. I mean, we were there for a good 10 minutes. And then as soon as I felt his hands release or start to ease, the second that happened is when I said, thank you. People with dementia, a lot of times, if they're doing something that is counterproductive or dangerous, let them know they're doing the correct thing as they begin to do it, Don't wait for them to be done. If you want them to get out of the car, this is an example. As soon as the foot comes out, I go, yep, that's right. Then they know, okay, I'm doing it right. Then they finish, instead of waiting until they're all the way out of the car and then going, good job. This whole time they're moving out of the car, they don't really know if this is what you want them to do or not. So encourage them as they're beginning to do it. And if you're in a dangerous situation, as soon as they start letting go, that's when you go, thank you, we're okay. And so we went through this in this little tiny bathroom for a good 10 minutes. And then he looks at me and he goes, well, what are we doing? And I went, I don't know, let's get out of here. So we went into the living room. He sat on the couch. He was still a little miffed. So I sat in the dining room where I could see him, but he couldn't see me, so I was behind him. And after things calmed down a little bit more, because I had to calm myself down, it wasn't all about him, I went into the kitchen and found something dividable. I think it was a muffin. And I went and sat next to him and took the muffin, so if he's here, I took the muffin, broke it in half, gave him half, and I ate the other half. So that is as old as it gets, right? You're breaking bread with someone. But it's that, again, that side by side, we're gonna wrap this up and put a bow on it. Here's your half of the muffin, right? So there was de-escalation, there was time to settle in, and then there's the wrap up of a peace offering. And within 15 minutes, he stood up and he goes, well, let's go. Let's get out of here. All of that had been forgotten. And I had calmed down, so it was my turn to go, okay, I'm going to follow his lead. Yep, let's go. Let's put our boots on. Let's go. But, holy cow, that was a scary day for me. And I'm really glad that I had the instincts to just go limp, because you don't know what you're walking into with someone with dementia. And if you're also dealing with a dying person, you don't know how the demented person is dealing with the dying person. And who has tried to pull them out of the situation or help them step into it. You have no idea what you're walking into. So remember this side-by-side thing. That might keep you in good standing. Types of grief with dementia. I'm assuming that you've all discussed in your training at one time or another anticipatory grief and continuing grief. There are also griefs particular to dementia. One is ambiguous grief, where the person is here and they're not here at the same time. It makes me really sad when I hear people say, oh, my mom died for me years ago. It's like, oh, wow, okay, she's still alive. The brain dies in different stages. And that's more of an incremental loss. Every time they take a dip down, what I teach in my workshop is, when you feel this dip, it's usually a loss of ability of some kind. And that's your cue to not only acknowledge it, doesn't have to be in a big way, but some people really get kind of ceremonial about it. I light a candle with each time I feel that dip. I write a poem, I talk to my sister. Whatever you want to do, you're acknowledging this incremental loss. It's also a time to double check your care plan. Okay, so now we have a loss in this. Do we need another caregiver to come in? Or do we need a counselor to come in? And then the other deal with the ambiguous loss, when you're sitting around a dinner table with someone with dementia, if they're in late stages, they're not conversing anymore. They might not even be able to feed themselves, but they are still here. And it's holding both concepts in your head at the same time. They are here and they're not here. And the only way to really deal with that is to hold them both. And that's pretty hard to do if you think in black and white. I mean, the beauty of dementia is that it teaches you to think in all the grays. It also teaches you to be in the moment. It teaches you patience. It teaches you nonverbal communication. Oh, we should get into that. I could just throw any old subject out and it could go on for hours. What do you bring with you if you're working with someone with dementia? I like to try to figure out if there is something that they like to keep in their hands. And if that's true, then I have them in my pocket. Whatever that is, I have one too. The man who pinned me up against the wall, I started every time I saw him, I'd go into my pockets and I'd go, how's it going? And he'd go, good. And I'd go, oh. What? And I'd go like this, and I'd have a little rock in there, and he'd go, oh, and he'd go dig in, and he'd pull out his rocks. And we would compare rocks. We're off to the races. Like that, that's the thing that always solidified us. I brought a feather for him one day, and he's like, you know, okay, he's not into feathers. It's got to be rocks or coins. Shoot, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. I'm a rock collector.
I carry a cow magnet with me.
A what?
A cow magnet.
Yes, cow magnets are awesome. He was into magnets too, yeah.
Yeah,
The dollar store is fabulous.
yeah. You know about cow magnets?
I don't know what it is.
It goes in their stomach.
They're
swallow
super
it.
strong.
Yeah, and it collects all the garbage that they eat. Metal.
And you bring that to a patient?
If somebody's into magnets. So it doesn't have to be a cow magnet. You can just go to the dollar store and get little kids' magnets.
Oh.
It's, you know, people who are into science, this is, think about what they did in their life as far as what they did for their hobbies, what they did for their job, and what seems to pique their interest. So sometimes I start making a collage where I'll bring a big piece of freezer paper and I write their name in the middle circle. And this is a good size paper. So Susan's in the middle. And then I want to think about what did Susan do for work and what's Susan's family like, and what did Susan do for hobbies? And I shouldn't say did, because a lot of times the hobbies are really still hanging on. And any other relationships? How are they spiritually? This kind of thing. And then I'll bring pictures. I have a ton of pictures that I have cut out from magazines. And if I'm just doing work and I have no idea what they did, or maybe I have an idea, but I want them to tell me more. If they worked on the railroad, which I live in Whitefish, so a lot of people are railroad workers, I'll bring pictures that have to do with railroad or lunch boxes or work boots, something like that, and I'll put them out on the table. And I don't say anything, I just put them out, and I'm looking at them too. It's kind of an exploration, and I see which ones they pick up. Sometimes they pick them up and put them down, and then they'll pick another one, and if they keep going to that one, that's the one that gets taped to this part of the paper. I'll put out pictures of different animals. If they pick all the dogs, we're going to the dog park. If they don't pick any dogs, the dog park is going to be lost on them. It's like, why'd you bring me here? This doesn't make any sense. If they pick all the cats, we're going to the kitty room at Humane Society. So it helps you to know if people are nonverbal, what to do with them, or what to talk about. I have a kitty. Here's my kitty's picture. You already know they like cats because it's on your collage. So that's a nice way of getting to know somebody that is nonverbal. Music is always a big deal. To try to find out what kind of music they like, what genre, and also The music that we listen to in high school and college age is what is most embedded in our brain. So I have an essay that I've written, and the title of it is Play Pink Floyd for Me. So when I've done an experiment, not an experiment, but I've done a project where I've invited a whole group of people to write their own biography for future caregivers. And that includes, you know, I am left-handed. These are the vegetables I do not like. Please don't feed them to me. These are my triggers. So triggers are huge with dementia too. What am I afraid of? I mean, just getting someone in the shower, you don't just push someone in the shower. You got to figure out all their triggers, and it might take a good month to figure them all out. Water is invisible. All of a sudden, something's coming down on them. Maybe the shower is large and dark and it feels like a cave. Maybe the room is too cold. They're probably not happy about being stripped. They're not taking their own clothes off. Someone else is doing that to them. So there's that feeling of violation. How do you work with a privacy towel? All of those are triggers. And it takes a long time to figure out the triggers, but once you do, you've eliminated all the things that scare them, and they're going to be much more apt to step in. Where are we on time?
We're getting close
Okay.
to you being,
Is anything rising to the top that you want to discuss more, or something I haven't?
Pets in the home, pets anywhere.
Yeah, I think sometimes pets are the thing, the being, that people with dementia feel safest with. And we can't let go of that, because a bunch of people are coming in and out of the house, and there's a pet that's maybe jumping on them or is in the way. That pet's going to be shooed out, and watch the person with dementia and see how they're reacting to that. Might make them really sad, in which case you need to find a room where they can be with the pet. And then let's go comfort the dog. Let's make sure the dog is safe. So you're, as a team, you are working to keep the dog safe. You always want to foster teamwork whenever you can.
you brought some books.
Yes, thank you.
And books and movies.
So these are from my personal collection. Lisa Genova wrote Still Alice. Maybe you've seen the movie. It's a great movie. She's a neurologist, and I also have another book of hers that I did not bring because it's really technical, but it's on how memories are formed. When Breath Becomes Air. I'm going to guess that a lot of you have read this one. Loving Someone Who Has Dementia. This is by Pauline Boss. She's also written a book called Ambiguous Loss. So she discusses that whole concept of someone being here and not being here at the same time. On Vanishing. This is written by a chaplain who's been in and out of hospice situations and in and out of assisted livings. And this is quite good. This is one of my favorite books I've ever read. The Iceberg, and it's by Marion Coates. And this is her almost day-by-day discussion of watching her husband die and how their 4-year-old son plays into this. It is beautifully written. I would read anything she wrote. Atul Gawande, Being Mortal. This is the top one, I think, if you have not read this. And then this one, Dying Well, by Ira Byock, and he's actually the doctor that started hospice in Montana, started in Missoula in the 70s, I think. So, that's all I know.
Thank you so much.